Let's get ready to Schmoedown!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special anniversary edition of the Schmoedown Rundown. My name is Aaron. I'll be your host for these proceedings. Joining me today, Frank Janisch. How you doing? How's it going?
It's going good. I'm back after a little hiatus, if you will, but it feels good to be back.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Brian Davids also here. What's up, man?
Happy anniversary, guys.
Likewise.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. So this is a casual episode. We're not doing edits. We're just doing a live to tape here for about maybe an hour or so. We're just going to shoot the breeze. So this is not your typical rundown episode. So guys, Frank, I guess I should start with you. I guess that makes the most sense.
Sure.
It's been a year, man.
Crazy.
A lot has changed, I guess. I re-listened to the inaugural pilot episode, which some people heard, not many, but it was out there in the ether for a little bit. And yeah, did you get a chance to listen back to that?
I did not.
Don't do it.
We had talked about this earlier before about the first episode, and you had always said it was horrible. And so I just took your word at it, and then you sent me the recut a few days ago. Yeah, you will listen to it. He did recut it, so maybe it sounds better. But then, I was a little busy, so I didn't get around to it. And I guess from what you're saying, I don't really need to bother. So
it's not so much. I mean, it's not so much. It's terrible speak. It's just like there's no structure. So it's like we're not even talking about the final scores of matches. It's like, oh, hey, this match happened. What do you think of it? It's like, what? Wait
okay.
There's no banter. It's just like, what's going on here? But here we are.
When are we bringing back the segment upon further review?
Never. It's never happening. It's never happening.
Fan favorite.
Yeah, okay. But man, it's been a long journey. I didn't realize that we were even this far ahead until like maybe a month ago. And I was like, oh wow, we've been doing this for a long time. But I don't know. Brian, you came on here about midway through or so, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But what are your reflections so far?
My reflections so far, the transition happened pretty quick. That's what I remember. And I remember it went pretty well, all things considered. Sometimes when you have a change in personnel on podcasts, there's kind of this feeling out period. Yet I just remember it working out pretty well from the get. I don't know what else to say about it, but because I had been talking about the Schmoedown for a while before on my other show, I think that's why I was able to kind of run with you guys from the initial show. So I don't know. It was just, I like that there was an existing format in place and I could adapt to that format. So we've, of course, adjusted that format ever since, but I like the structure that was in place.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank, a few people up top, like fans that have been with us since day one, I think, like Abdul. We all know Abdul, man. The guy's been with us since jump, I think, like since episode 1. And he's a great guy. And, he's supported us for a whole year. So that's pretty insane.
I think Sarah, you can say Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah as well.
And now she writes for the Schmoedown blog and stuff. So,
oh my god, dude, her article about Merle was fantastic. It's great.
Right.
But Delisha Russell as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
from jump, man, she's been there for us. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention those people. So, as we kind of go along here, we're going to tell you probably some things you didn't know. First and foremost is that 2 people that had a big part of getting this show integrated into the actual Schmoedown more so than it already was Ricky Hayberg and Elliot Dewberry. Not something a lot of people know. Ricky and Elliot were big advocates of this show, and they helped us along in the early goings and helped us out a lot. So Even them doing a little bit of kayfabe with us, where they told us to like F off and stuff, was magic at a time where, we were, looking for an audience still at that time, and they helped us out tremendously. So.
Yeah, I remember kind of having this little, not so much of a beef, was kind of like Ricky, just because he wasn't, very good, and we call him out on that. And I think that was part of the kayfabe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Ricky got it from day one,
Yeah.
And then we eventually interviewed Elliot, and he was fantastic. Great guys, really.
Oh, I remember doing that interview, and Elliot, he was on his phone. We could just see him like walking around his apartment or whatever it was, which was pretty funny. So that was
man. I mean, look at the guests that we've had. I mean, it's pretty insane. But I gotta start with this. I was going back today, just kind of looking at interviews that we had done, and I came across episode 10 is the Finstock episode, which Frank, I don't even believe you weren't even on.
No, I wasn't there for that one. No,
you son of a gun. And Brian, you weren't with us yet, but episode 10 was really the turning point for this program. That's the episode where we interviewed Finstock for like an hour, and it was just not Tom Dagnino, full blown Finstock, and it's just going back and listening to it as a podcaster and interviewer. Sometimes you have to tee people up for stuff for them to, oh, okay, we'll run with this point. Not Finstock. He created gold in that episode, as far as I'm concerned. LB, Loser Behavior, started on the rundown. He started it there. And just going back and hearing what he had to say is incredible. So if you're looking for like a bookmark episode, go back and listen to that one, because Bob Finstock put the rundown on the map, as far as I'm concerned, and I will be forever grateful to him for that. And he's been a great friend of the show ever since.
Yeah, I remember listening back to that episode because I couldn't make it, and I could not believe that I ended up missing that episode. But man, you're right. I think that was the episode that really took off, because at the time, at least YouTube-wise, that was the most traction we had ever gotten, and rightfully so, because it was Finstock, and this was right after he broke up with Makuga, and that was just really good stuff.
It was lightning in a bottle. Like we caught him super hot off of that episode, and Kristian had contacted me before we did the interview, and he was like, "Hey, what about Tom? What about Finstock being on the show?" I was like, "Oh my God, you got to be kidding me! That'd be fantastic." And Finstock was all for it, and the rest, as they say, is history. And he's been on since, and he's done great things for us since. He's got us people, and he's came on himself. So Tom Dagnino, or Finstock, whatever you wish to call him, is a great friend of the show, and we wouldn't be here without him, as far as I'm concerned. But we put out a post on Facebook. We got a couple questions that we wanted to go through, and we'll just round table it as we just continue to sit here and talk. I'll start with Michael Oregon. He asks, how did you guys get the job, and how long does it take to make an episode? Frank?
Yeah, so this was taking place back in just Schmoeville. This was before the MTS page was even a thing, and I had been keeping track of stats probably I want to say 3 or 4 months before like the first episode ever happened, and so I had been kind of known on the page as like the stat guy, and I remember getting tagged in a post that you put in Schmoeville saying talk to the stat guy, and so I saw that and I was like, hell yeah, I'll jump in on this, because I think before that, like a couple months before that, I did a Google Hangout for Schmoeville regarding Game of Thrones, and so I thought I was gonna be another one of these one-off kind of things, and it was like, yeah, I'll hop in and do this, and that'll be fun. And so that's pretty much how I got into the first episode, and then after the first episode, I think you can probably speak to that better than I can, Aaron.
Well, it pretty much just started with a tweet, and being a big fan of the Schmoedown and how it works and all that kind of wrestling and stuff, I was like, you know what, like this needs kind of its own thing. I feel like, I mean, the guys on the Schmoeville podcast at the time, Bryan and Ryan Snelling, they did a great job recapping it. But I just felt like maybe it needed its own thing. So I reached out to Kristian, and he was like, the guys on the Schmoeville podcast already do a great job of recapping it. But, if you want to put something together, then, whatever, I'll listen to it. Pretty. I know he didn't say whatever, but, and we did it, and I sent it to him, and he had many notes. And you get that initial, like, Kristian is a guy that you look up to and have great respect for. And then he's like, hey, here's my number. Call me on the phone. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Like 2 days ago, we didn't know each other. Now I'm calling you on the phone. And then it became a thing. And it's like, hey, we're going to make this. I think we're going to make this a thing. Give me here's some notes, get a team together, tell me what you want to do. And then I think I even contacted you first. I was like, Frank, it's a thing. And
yeah, I remember you telling me all this stuff about you talking to Kristian. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? We just this. I couldn't really believe it was happening because at that time, and I still am a fan, but I was such a huge fan with the Schmoedown, and I had just started getting into Schmoes and everything they were doing at that time. So it was all very new to me, and it was all just coming to a head really quickly in a way I never thought would happen. Like I said, I thought this would just be like a one-off thing that the Schmoeville community did, and that would be it. But then, you gave me about this being a regular thing, and I was like, holy crap. I was like, it sounds like fun.
Yeah, and we started. We jumped off with me, you, Matt Kearns, and Evan DeGraff. Both those guys are a part of Take 3, and they're a part of the legacy of the show. I mean, they were on the first episode. Our friend Kyle Luby came up with the name.
Yeah,
initially it was going to be Schmoedown Throwdown, I think is what it was going to be called. Which credit to Kyle, he's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, that's fair. And he's like, what about Rundown? I was like, yeah, that probably fits better. So it became the Schmoedown, which he really never I try to give him credit for, and he's like, you don't have to give me credit for it, but he did it. So
we had him on the second episode, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he was great. He was really good. And then I've tried to have him back since. He's like, nah, man, I'm okay. But it's out there, so it's a thing.
Yeah, that second one is up on the SK Plus channel.
Yeah, that's where it started. That's where it started. As I was going through that, there's an episode missing though. I don't know if you noticed that. Like the draft episode is missing
from the playlist.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
It's on the videos page. It's not in the playlist, but it is up there. It is in the videos.
Well, that's fair. I think it has a weird name anyway, but that's probably my fault. But let's talk about how long does it take to make an episode? Bryan, I mean, we haven't heard from you in a minute. Like, what goes into your prep? Like, how much time would you say that you spend prepping for a weekly rundown? Like a normal rundown, not for the marathon that we've been doing for the past 3 weeks.
Well, it starts with Tuesday's episode. I'll take notes of every beat throughout every match, everything that happens, every question, every answer, anything that catches my eye or ear. And then once that's all noted, I'll go through it and I'll kind of circle some spots that might make good talking points. What can I rant off of? What would be good group discussion? So that's Tuesday. The week kind of carries on. Some news kind of comes out during the week. We kind of build off of that as well. Then the Friday match drops, same format there. Exhaustive notes. Go through it at a quicker rate because we record Fridays. So there's not as much preparation time. That's something that affects both Frank and I, given that we work relatively up close to the recording time. But yeah, so it's basically putting together talking points based on more than just what the questions and answers are. So, all these rants typically start with, one small moment can lead to an entire episode's worth of discussion. So, it varies depending on if there's a big news week or a certain interview, of course, but that's, I guess, what a typical week looks like.
Frank, kind of give me because I really actually need to know too. Like, give me kind of an idea of an insight of a week of stats for you. Like where does that start?
Oh my God, dude! It's literally this could never end. Just because I'm a one-man show basically, and there's so much information, especially with the tournaments going on. But outside of the tournaments, because I didn't start recording from the get-go, I've always been playing catch up in one way or another in certain areas of keeping track of stats. But when the match happens, I usually just watch it just as a fan, just straight through once. And then I'll watch it a second time, recording all the stats from the match, taking every bit of information I can so that I have it if I ever want to compile certain different kinds of stats down the line. So I have the information ready to go. So I do that for each match. And then I divvy up the information and put it in different charts or graphs, what have you. And then hopefully, and I just kind of like look over the information and just see like what stands out, what was peculiar here, or even if I had an idea of a stat, I'll go look at the information and go, is it there? Is it not? I'm not trying to reach for anything. I'm just trying to look to see if stuff is there that's interesting. Like so this happened. This seems really interesting. Did it happen before? Recent example. It's an obvious and easy example, but it's when McWeeny went back-to-back perfect rounds. Let's say it didn't happen in back-to-back matches. Let's say it happened 6 months apart. I do keep track of stats like that, so it's not as hard for me to go back and look at stuff. So there's literally, I'm doing stats in some form or fashion every day. And like Brian had alluded to that, we work pretty close up to the record time. And on Fridays, when the matches drop, I literally almost have no prep time. I actually have to watch the match during my lunch break at work, and then I take the train from work. So that's when I'm kind of trying to recap the match statistically, if I can. So Friday's a bit hectic in regards just because of work, trying to watch the match, and then prepping for that match on that day. It's a little rough. And then to record. So right after work, I get home, and then like 30, 40 minutes later, we record. So Fridays are pretty stressful sometimes. So I try to get a lot of stuff done before Friday. But yeah, it's kind of a whirlwind on a Friday, especially when there's a doubleheader. That's just the worst because my lunch is not long enough sometimes to watch 2 matches in a lunch. Yeah, so it gets a little dicey sometimes. Yeah.
I wish I could make it sound like I do more work, but I don't. Basically, when a match comes out, my system now is I have like my own little custom scorecard that I have. So what I'll do is, and hold on, guys, let me get all the way through it before you judge me here. I'll skip ahead. I'll fast forward through the promos. I will get to the match first, just the match. I'll write down the scoring and all of that. Then I will watch it again all the way through with the promos and everything. Just so I like to get the scores first so I can just initially go back through and then I can look for nuances and jumping off points. That's really the thing. That's really the reasoning there. And then, as you compile it, you get the news and we all get a run sheet that we all can edit and go on, which is kind of, I don't know, I've been kind of lax with it for the past, couple weeks. So it's just been hectic, but that's usually what happens. And we just kind of jump off of that. And so
do you guys mind if I give my own individual history to this show or the path that led to the show?
Sure.
Is that self-indulgent? Because the question did ask, how did you get the job? So I feel like I have to explore my own history to get to this history, which is now a bigger part of my history.
Of course.
So I guessed it on episode 20 of what was once called Schmoeville Podcast. This was at a time when they were entertaining guest host. Kristian liked that I was a longtime fan who knew more than just basics material because I could do history lessons off the cuff and explain the old school references that fans like me crave. So he offered me the gig the next morning after the episode aired on Sunday. And I was really only planning to do one episode since I was heavily involved in film clubs at the time. But I had a great time, and I knew I could enhance the Schmoes No fan experience by way of that show. I later renamed the show Schmoeville After Show, and I met Aaron Turner during a famous crossover episode that covered last year's Schmoedown Spectacular. The After Show was eventually rewarded to me. I relaunched it as After Schmo and immediately reached out to Aaron to co-host since we hit it off during the You're Welcome for the Ratings crossover. But before this, as well as during it, Kristian had floated the idea of me doing the Brian Davids show on SK Plus. It would have been me talking about whatever, be it TV, film, Schmoedown, doesn't matter. And truth be told, I was starting to get bored of the after show just because there were only so many ways you could make fun of Josh McCouga or complain about the length of movie talk mailbag questions. So Mark, Kristian, and I had a big talk where everybody was kind of intrigued by the Brian Davids show idea. And I closed the meeting by saying I'd think about it. And that very weekend, though, the Rundown just so happened to need a guest host. And Aaron, you asked me to hop on about 10 minutes before the show. I obliged, and I ended up having a great time talking Schmoedown, something I had been doing, as said, on the after show, just a less sweaty version, of course. But the following Wednesday, I emailed everybody and I said that I wanted to be on the Rundown. Nobody said no. That night, I called into the live show and I made the announcement. Strangely enough, much like Schmoeville Podcast, where I guested on episode number 20 and became full-time on episode number 21, I also guested on Rundown episode number 20 and became full-time by episode number 21. I've now been podcasting on this channel for 13 months and have been on close to 70 episodes, including 35 with the Rundown. So that is my path to the Rundown.
I didn't realize it was that many. Wow. It's been a long journey. It feels like yesterday, and that's a very cliche, but it feels like yesterday that we all started doing this. It's weird.
Yeah, it's I actually can't believe it's been a year, just because a lot of stuff has gone on in my life outside of the podcast, but the podcast has been one of the main constants through everything.
The anchor.
Yeah. And also a lot of things have kind of revolved around this in certain ways, So yeah, it's been a very interesting year, and just like it's just a whole year, really. Wow. Yeah.
Well, let's go to another question real quick. This is from Elin Olaf. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. Since this is just the beginning for you guys, what are some aspects of the show you would like to add in the near future? I'll take this one first. I would love to do a show live. I think that would be super fun. Just a Friday night live where people can, whether it be on SK Plus or the actual Schmoes YouTube channel, whatever, it doesn't matter. But wherever people can, interact with us all at the same time, but we keep it super loose. I think that would be fun. That's something that I would like to see. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, I would like to kind of see that as well. For a little bit, we have been doing the Facebook Lives a little while back when it felt like a new thing Facebook had, but even though it wasn't. So that was kind of a funny little run of like these little, every now and then Facebook Lives, which we haven't done in a while. But I did like the feel of that because we were interacting with the fans right there and then. I'm not going to say fans, that's a weird word. Other community members of the Schmoedown. And so that was a lot of fun. I got a lot of energy out of that. And that was a really cool thing to do. Another thing that floated earlier, you might remember this when I mentioned it, but we never really ironed it out. It was just kind of like a passing thought. And it was basically geared towards the YouTube viewer, where instead of just having the thumbnail the entire constant time, this is before Brian Ward thumbnails, which are awesome, by the way. I thought maybe we could have some sort of a slideshow with stats to go along with our discussion, but a lot more time and effort, more time than we have available between all of us. And if somehow in the future that could ever be integrated in a visual way for the YouTube viewer, I think that'd be kind of cool. But also that's a lot more work that I would have to put together, and then the upload times and all that stuff, and who knows? But it was just a random thought I had that could be interesting.
Don't kill RB3. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, clearly we need interns. That would be great to have stats pop up on the screen as Frank is doing his stat caps. And I've always been intrigued by the idea of live streaming the recording process. People can basically tune in right now to us recording this show. They can't talk, of course, but for the super fan, it's always cool to see how the process goes down. At least some of my favorite podcasts do it this way, where you can just tune into them recording. But I'm always looking to fine tune the sports radio vibe of the show. That's why we've started to incorporate more match highlights as well as cool down interviews, as we call them. Even if we already have a main guest for the week, we still want to get the other winners of the week on record so we can have our own exclusive post-match interview. When players do their post-match Schmoedown interviews with Jen Sturger, those are usually lacking perspective that time and fan reactions bring. Once they record a cool down with us, I like that they're a bit different since there's some perspective that wasn't there during the actual match's taping. More importantly, it adds to the ESPN vibe of the show where we recap the match, we cover the highlights and stats, and then cut to a short cool down interview to wrap it all up. So I think we've added most of the aspects we'd want already. It's just a matter of fine tuning them and perfecting them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go on to the next question. This is from Marcus Alstrom. This is a long one, and this is why I kept it, because it's like 4 questions, and I liked all the questions. He asked, first question, who in your opinion should enter the league in the future? Anyone in particular from the YouTube space? Brian.
Well, I'd like to see the celebrity league players or just celebrity players enter league play. I want to see that expanded via the likes of working TV actors such as Brittany Young and Brett Davern or Bo Murchoff. They're working actors, but they're also up-and-coming actors who could really benefit from the Schmoedown platform as they get their name out there and build a rabid fan base that follows them from acting gig to acting gig. The problem is a lot of shows shoot in Vancouver, Atlanta, New Orleans, or New York, so you'd have to target the few shows that do shoot in California. I think we've tapped YouTube for the most part. I realize there are plenty of other big channels that are still out there, especially in gaming, but we're still staying within the YouTube bubble, and I think we need to reach out of that bubble at this point. It's critical that we start attracting from the wrestling audience as well, the wrestling audience that loves movies. There are plenty of more Aaron Turners out there, and I don't think we have enough of them, to be quite frank. And that leads to the most important get, a working wrestler who happens to love movie trivia. If you can get a Sam Levine of the WWE, then we're opening the floodgates when it comes to new viewers and expanded reach. It's a shame Fredo Knapsack can't do more for us in this department, but hopefully Booker T's affiliation with the show will land us another wrestler someday. I wish Roddy was still around in general, but man, he would have been the perfect guy to have around when the Schmoedown really got cooking in the middle of last year.
The hot rod on the Schmoedown. Whew. Gave me chills. Frank, what about you, man? Who do you want to see in there?
So I've been a big fan of the Philip DeFranco network of shows that he had, like SourceFed Nerd, even Super Panic Frenzy when that was a thing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that stuff. But they had the likes of Steve Zaragoza and Matt Lieberman, which they were a team in the 2015 tournament. I would like to see those guys back again because we just had Only Stupid Answers podcast of DJ Woolridge and Sam Basher, who are also formerly of SourceFed Nerd. I think it would be pretty cool to have all 4 of those guys go at it on a team battle because there was a lot of SourceFed supporters out there on YouTube. And if you follow that story, they got canceled pretty abruptly. And a lot of fans were kind of disappointed with that. But I like those personalities. I like those people. I would love to see them back again in some form or fashion with the Schmoedown. Also, I think I may have said this before, but Whitney Moore, I think she'd be pretty good in terms of like Inner Geekdom. I think she does stuff for DC, if I remember correctly. So those are just some of the other YouTubers that I had been following for a while and that I think are pretty knowledgeable when it comes to movies. So I would love to see some of those enter the league.
Yeah, you took my answer with Whitney Moore. I think she's fantastic, and I know her basically from IGN. She does a lot of stuff, but she's kind of everywhere. But yeah, I think she would be great for an Inner Geekdom player. Another person I look at is Kevin Pereira. He's got a show on True TV now, but Kevin's a big movie nerd, so I'd like to see maybe him in Inner Geekdom. He's a lot of fun. He's got a great personality. If you remember the Attack of the Show days with him and Olivia Munn, they were gold together on that show. So he's a guy that I look at like maybe they could get him. I don't know, maybe. But next question, next part of it. Any new categories you'd like to see on the wheel or add to the Inner Geekdom categories? I'll just stick with the same answer I always stick with, which is John Carpenter films. I feel like it needs to be in there. The guy's filmography is impeccable. So many hits for that guy. So many, cult classics from, They Live to The Thing to Big Trouble in Little China to Assault on Precinct 13, Starman. You name it, the guy's done it. I mean, Escape from New York, Escape from LA. It's John Carpenter's influence is everywhere, and I believe talked about in like the Hollywood heavyweight director sense that often, and I think he's my favorite director, and I just think that he deserves a spot on that wheel. So what about you guys? Frank?
I really don't know. I kind of like how it is now. I think the only thing I would like to see more of is different directors. We've seen Spielberg and Tarantino, Scorsese. So I know Christopher Nolan popped up a little while ago, but I'd like to see, just more directors. I think that'd be a nice way to go.
It's 2 votes for John Carpenter.
Basically.
What about you, Brian?
Real quick regarding the last question, I can't forget about Cody Decker. I just heard him on Fredo Files recently. He's the better half to Jen Sturger, and the guy's got some impressive knowledge. So I think he's going to play the beginning of next year, but he proved something to me on that episode. But as far as new categories, it's weird because they've got a bunch of slices created already. They just don't use them. So I've said this many times, but more actresses, especially Scarlett Johansson, which I believe is created, but she's never been drawn. Reese Witherspoon, Charlize Theron. As far as actors, Christian Bale, he is a must. Christopher Nolan, we've only had him once. Let's use him. There's too much good stuff there. I'd also like to see Keanu Reeves, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hardy. Back to the Future. Back to the Future would be a great category, whether it's in standard, Inner Geekdom, or whatever. It's a great category. And M. Night Shyamalan, I think, because he's had so many good films and so many bad films, I think he'd be a fascinating category in the Schmoedown.
Well, the next one, I'll just bat this one back to you, Brian. If you were in the Schmoedown, name one song you'd make your entrance to.
Oh, man, this is tricky, and I've thought about this a lot over the months, years. I'd love to use one of my own songs or write something for it. I realize how that sounds, but if you can do it, why not?
Sure.
Secondly, you want songs with relatively long yet quick-hitting intros, such as Tool's Stinkfist or Stone Temple Pilots' Vaseline or Down. Almost anything by Rage Against the Machine is great. Bomb Track was a great one. Unfortunately, Nose used it, but there's also stuff by like AC/DC with Big Gun or Nirvana's Milk It or Thrice's Fire Breather. This is the problem. I could go on for days, but there are so many options, and I would hate to have to just pick one, but you can't go wrong with any of the bands I just listed.
What about you, Franklin?
Well, I decided just to use my favorite song of all time, which is Everlong, Foo Fighters.
Oh,
So
didn't know that.
that was,
Dude.
yeah.
Like, no lie,
Get
my
out.
favorite song as well.
Get out,
I
come
swear
on.
to God.
Look, a year later and I
swear to
didn't know
God.
this?
It is a lot of people's favorite song.
Yeah.
Did we just become best friends?
Well, geez.
Yeah.
It took until now? God.
Did I ever
I
tell
read
you guys
this-
about the time I met Dave Grohl?
No.
Or should I save that story?
Yes, you did.
Oh, wow.
but I read this article about like every morning when you wake up, you should listen to your favorite song to, like, I don't know, jumpstart your day and like put you in a good mood. And I listen to Everlong is my alarm. So that is amazing, Frank.
that is pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
Gotta promise not to stop when I say when.
All of that, yeah, definitely. I thought about this for a long time too. Like, I know everybody's probably expecting, ooh, what wrestling teams he gonna cut out to? I would choose Threes and Sevens by Queens of the Stone Age. I love that song.
Oh, good choice. They're another great intro band. Damn.
And that opening riff just, I don't know. I think it'd be perfect for the Schmoedown. Competitors, if you want to use it, you can, because I'm not going to be in the Schmoedown ever. So feel free to use Threes and Sevens by Queens of the Stone Age. It's a great song. If you don't know what it is, Google it. It's great. I'm actually going to skip the next one because I don't think we do cosplay. But
well, let me answer that.
Okay.
I would just dress like other Schmoedown players. I would love the chance to dress like Josh McCouga or JSR or old school Harloff, when Harloff used to wear the baggier clothing.
Oh yeah,
and the beanies and whatnot. I think that would be fun.
Oh Lord, Frank, did you have a cosplay that you?
I was like, well, I could just come out as Dave Grohl with a broken leg. I don't know. I mean,
oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Frank fighters. I didn't realize this.
Frank fighters every episode.
I'm telling you.
Lewis Carmen asks, if you played in the league and were forced to join an existing faction, which one would you choose? And in parentheses, it says, of course, you will all say the Den, and you're wrong, because I would join the Growling Commandos. And not only would I join the Growling Commandos, I would be a team I would not belong on in any universe with Whitney and Bibbs, but I would add Mark Bernardin and would be a freaking super team. And I would me and Mark Bernardin would be on a team, and I wouldn't have to do anything. So that's what I would do. What about you, Franklin?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that I've been a fan of John Roca for just the longest time, since I've been watching the Schmoedown. So I would definitely join the Horsemen.
Wait, they still exist? They still exist?
Believe it or not, they exist, yeah.
If you get four, sure.
Well, we would just be the Horsemen, and then a fourth will come along once the time was right. I don't know. But yeah, I would join the Horsemen and bring them back to glory.
What about you, Brian?
It's tough when it comes to the Growling Commandos and Top Den, but I feel like Top Den was made for me, given my I guess aptitude for controversy, my attraction to controversy. I feel like that stable was made specifically for me, but if I was thrown in the Commandos, I know I could hang there as well. So
someone go ahead and make the song. This den is your den. This den was made for you and me. It's great. I don't know why I sang. That's weird. I'm not even drinking. I'm going to actually skip down one and then go back. But this one's from Sarah Hussein, who we talked about earlier, a great friend of the show. She says, what player in the Schmoedown has surprised you the most this year? I'll start this one. Jeremy Johns. Like, I know it sounds weird because he hasn't competed in a while. He's like taking a little break, but I used to be a guy that when I would see Jeremy Johns, I would just be like, oh, this guy. But he really impressed me in the Energeetum Fatal 5-Way. And I know like people were very upset that, Rachel this or that, but Jeremy got a shot and he took Hector down to the end and he didn't quite get there, but I was really impressed with him. He's really surprised me this year. What about you, Frank?
And I mean this in the best way, and it's Mark Riley, because for a while he had been on this downturn after losing the belt. He went through a very, very rough patch, and for him to bounce back the way he has in teams and then reclaiming the belt and then now ultimately retiring for however long that may be, he surprised me not only because he won the belt, but his level of play was at a level that he had never played at before. So that was really impressive to me as the year has gone on. So that's what surprised me the most, is his level of play, not necessarily that he got to the heights that he did, but that he just raised his game to another level. And I think it's pretty obvious it was at a high level during this tournament. So that would be my player.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, Riley seemed to fix himself when he came out as James Bond at Spectacular. Yeah, he lost that match, to JSR Spectacular, but he seemed to get his mojo back, and that carried over into the early part of this season. But my answer is fairly obvious, and Jeremy Johns was on my honorable mentions, but Rachel Cushing, that's the easy choice as far as I'm concerned.
Can't go wrong.
The tournament will certainly affect this question a great deal, but it's definitely Rachel Cushing. Even when she doesn't win, she's still impressive in losses, and not everything is her fault. Not everything goes a player's way, but she's still impressive even in losses. And to come from a dark editing room to the forefront of the Schmoedown, to be playing in a main event in such a short amount of time, that there's something to be said about that, seeing her confidence grow, just seeing the character evolve from someone who was trembling on her very first episode to now being this literal crusher on screen with the trivia. It's really been special to watch, and I like that she is now going to allow for other women to take the plunge. And I know Clark was the trailblazer, but Rachel has shown that it can be done. So she's definitely the most surprising player for me.
Yeah, I can't go wrong with that. She's fantastic. And shout out to Chris Skaliski, question writer during our draft episode. He's the one that called it, man. He's like, great. He called that. So good for him. He nailed it.
Yeah, he worked with her on the website. So he had a sneak preview of what we were missing out on.
Absolutely.
He was right on. Chris Clark, our good friend Chris Clark, he asks, out of everyone you've had on for interviews, who has been your favorite? Now, this is kind of an unfair question, as everybody has been fantastic, as we know, but there are a few that I hold especially particular. Scott Mance, who I'm just a massive fan of through, Profiles of the Mullen Advance. Used to be my favorite podcast when it was on. I used to love the dynamic between he and Alicia. The Clark Wolf episode, I adore Clark. She's fantastic. We're both genre nerds, so to get a chance to talk with her was just outstanding. And I covet the Rachel Cushing episode that we did. I think that was not only just like a Schmoedown interview that was very personal, and it was really cool to do that. So I kind of cheated and chose 3, but those are mine. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, you chose 3 that I was not a part of.
Maybe that's why they were the best.
Maybe that's why. Okay. No, that's funny. The one that this is actually pretty funny because this is going to be thrown right back at you, Aaron. The one I really liked the most, or had one of the most fun with, is when we had Bryan and Snyder on at the same time.
Yeah,
and I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and
that was fun.
That was just a really fun time with both of them, talking everything Schmoedown, and that one was a lot of fun. And I also had a really great time talking with Ben, who we just had on a few weeks ago. So those are the 2 that really stick out to me.
What about you, Brian?
First off, it's not to be diplomatic or anything, but it's true. Anyone who's been on our show, we're extremely grateful for, and we all value them in certain ways. And
absolutely,
I hate picking favorites, but in this case, recency bias, Sam Levine was wonderful. Anything with Bibiani and Snyder, I've loved. Rachel Cushing was a game changer as far as I'm concerned, because it wasn't just an interview. She was also partaking in the actual recap of the matches for that week. So I love when we do these hybrid episodes where it's part interview, part recap. Fans get a little bit of analysis from these people. They also get standard interview questions and whatnot. So I love the hybrid episodes. And of course, I love the Jen Sturger episode, the Jen Sturger interview. I thought she was a welcome breath of fresh air. I like that we were the first to really get to know her. She hadn't been around all that much. She's done a few matches here and there. So I like that we got to introduce her to the audience. But like I said, anytime we've had a guest, Dagnino, the Action Guys, doesn't matter. I've enjoyed my time with just about everybody. So those are just a few that come to mind.
Yeah, just absolutely tremendous. Like it's too many to almost count, which sounds like we're bragging, but it's really just, we're incredibly lucky to have the access that we do to. I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what to say, but Michael Campbell was our next question. He asks, what has been your biggest upset / surprise win? I don't know if he means ever or just for this season, but I guess I would say the one that kind of stunned me a little was Makuga beating Finn Draco. I did not see that coming at all. That was out of nowhere because Makuga at that time was really on a – well, he was like half hot and half cold at the time, but –
he's always at that.
That's true.
He had a streak there for a bit. Where he's trying to gather a few wins.
But then Draco was coming off that big like Bibiani match, and you know he had the match with Jay Washington that wasn't so great, so we didn't know who it was, and then he had that. I was like, man, what in the world's going on? But that one stunned me. What about you, Frank?
You know, my biggest upset. You could certainly say like the Tough Beats Double Jeopardy is a huge upset, but I gotta go back to last year's singles tournament, Clark Wolf losing to Makuga, because it wasn't really a loss, but the fact that it broke my bracket. It was the only one I got wrong in that bracket. And I was like, I think everyone was expecting Clark to win because she had beat him pretty soundly earlier in that year. And, you know, Makuga was the guest master, and how long can that last? And he ended up in the tournament, and I was completely, not only was I surprised, but yes, I was upset. So, yeah.
What about you, Brian?
Fredo Knapsack beating an exhausted Sam Witwer without buzzers at Celebration.
Yeah, we were there.
Was a surprise, certainly. Jeremy beating Rachel was a shock. Obviously, the format played a role, the 5-way format at the time. But, of course, he later proved his worth when he beat the living crap out of a still living and breathing Robert Meyer Burnett.
That he did.
And then Snyder beating McQueenie was shocking at the time. Ellis beating JSR in the Ultimate Schmoedown Singles Tournament Final was rather shocking at the time because nobody counted on Ellis, and everybody thought, oh, he's a comedian, he doesn't take things seriously, but Mark Ellis really proved himself, and that was kind of the beginning of this advantage I think exists where if you call matches, you're exposed to information, you're around the game a lot, your brain is reminded of films you haven't thought about in a while, so Ellis kind of started all that with that. And then Finstock beating Schnepp was a shock, and then almost beating Makuga. Those are still some shocking moments, even if they didn't quite happen. So those are the few that come to mind.
Yeah, it seems like lately it's just been very even. Like we've had very few blowouts. Like the team matches, we've had a couple knockouts here or there, but it's been pretty even keel, I would say.
And the Wolves of Steel, the complete smackdown of LTTP, that was shocking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just given how well the Wolves of Steel played, they played arguably the greatest game ever after 2 rounds. So that was shocking, all things considered.
Yeah, they were tremendous. Let's go to the next one. This one's from Leo Logan, who asks, is there a team who hasn't competed in a while that you would want to see come back? I would like to see Team Nerdist come back, whether it's Dan and Rachel, whether it's Dan and Jessica, whether it's Chris Hardwick and Jessica, or Dan or Rachel, any of them. I would like to see them come back because I feel like they went up against IGN, who we really didn't know what they were capable of at the time, and my God, now we know. But I don't feel like they got a good enough chance. They were, of course, in the previous iteration of the Schmoedown as well, but I just feel like with that team, that's an untapped resource there. I feel like they should come back.
For me, this one's easy. For me, Team Clammy Hands, as well as MODOK. I think these are 2 top 5 teams, maybe even higher than that. So the more I get of these 2 teams, the happier I'll be.
What about you, Frank?
Oh, this one is would be so fun to see back, and I'm on the opposite side of the aisle when it comes to this faction, but I would love to see Team Box Office Breakdown make a reunion.
Wow.
And
blasphemy.
I would love to see
it's blasphemy.
Like the return of Finstock comes back, and JT goes, let's do one match, some sort of vanity match. It doesn't have to be for anything really.
Celebrity Schmoedown.
A Celebrity Schmoedown, yeah. I think it would be Really cool to see them back together as a team. Be really fun to see Finstock, actual Finstock with the mask back, just to give us the shades of 2015 all over again and the run that they went on and the magic that they had. I think they could pull it out one more time for another special reunion match.
I like what you were. I like what you were thinking there. I liked your headspace.
Let me ask you guys. We had a late addition to the question list. When do you guys think Finstock will return? Do you think it'll happen at Spectacular?
I don't know when the suspension's up. It's got to be soon, right?
Yeah, it's very soon.
Yeah, I cannot remember the exact date that happened. I would have to go back and because I mean, Tom, he could bring that back whenever he wanted then after the the band date, So I really don't. Free for all comes out. I don't know.
Well, if the Schmoedown is anything like WWE, which we know that it is, it's that time is not a real thing. So it's kind of like
true.
You have a year suspension, but it's really wink, wink, like 6 months.
Yeah, but it's like, do we want to deal with all those people being like, it isn't a whole year,
Time is a flat circle, guys.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Well, okay, so we have one more question that we're going to go through, and then we'll go back and we'll riff. And I'll tell you something that nobody ever knew that was kind of funny and weird. This one comes from Aaliyah Moore, our new Schmoedown Facebook page admin, I believe. And I think it's her birthday today, but by the time you hear this, it'll be a belated birthday. So happy belated birthday. She says, I'm sure you have learned a lot in the last year. So what advice would you give to other people out there wanting to make their own Schmoedown related content? I'll use a wrestling reference. Hey, it's a wrestling reference, but CM Punk was once asked about a wrestler named Seth Rollins, who is one of the best wrestlers in the game right now, Seth Rollins. And they said, Michael Cole asked CM Punk, he said, what do you think about Seth Rollins being the next CM Punk? And CM Punk said, Seth Rollins needs to concentrate on being the first Seth Rollins and not the second CM Punk. And by that, I mean, that probably made no sense. But what I mean is, don't try to emulate something. Make it your own. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do, to kind of like you want to create something based off of something, but you don't want it to. What I'm basically saying is just put your own spin on it. You can make anything you want out of this league. We've seen podcasts and blogs and reactors leagues. Like, everybody's doing something different. So just as long as you are doing something different, that's what you want to do. Anybody else?
Yeah, and I think to even go along with that, also just, I mean, I still, even though this is a year later, I still feel very new to all this.
Sure.
But even it just concentrate on what you want to do. What do you want to talk about? What is it that you're most passionate about the Schmoedown? Maybe someone else out there, and I've seen other people post stuff in the MTS page with stats. Maybe you're really passionate about stats. Talk about that stuff, something that you're really passionate about. Or maybe you're really passionate about the kayfabe storylines, hone in on that. And whatever aspect of the Schmoedown that you are very passionate about, I think maybe that's where you would want to start. And then from there, you can figure out what else you'd like to do. But I think if you can hone down what you are super passionate about, it makes it a lot easier to talk about it instead of trying to cover all your bases because you think that's what you need to do, and maybe you're not well versed in this area, and that'll bleed through. So I think, again, just whatever aspect of the Schmoedown you're most passionate about, attack that.
What about you, Brian? Anything?
Find a way to differentiate yourself from the rest. If 20 people are doing reaction videos, how can you make yours different from the rest? What can you be the first to do within this space? If you're a rundown style recap show, how do you differentiate it from us? The audience, as Aaron said, doesn't want more of the same. Find opportunity within the Schmoedown that's not being covered yet, that's untapped. Whether it's an aspect of the game, kayfabe, as Frank said, perhaps, or a platform that the Schmoedown is not presently on. And if you're going to go for guests, make sure you veer away from the people that the audience has heard multiple times, especially lately on shows like ours or Take 3. So always look to provide the audience with something that they haven't gotten lately or haven't gotten at all. So be the first to do something. Don't just be another person doing the same thing.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the question Q&A part of it. We appreciate those questions, guys. They were great. That was a lot of fun to go through. I gotta say something. Episode 11. Hey, Frank, you weren't on that one either. But episode 11 was an interesting episode because I was out of town. I had flown home for the second time in 2 weeks because I had 2 deaths in the family in consecutive weeks. Just an awful thing. November of last year was just awful for me. But anyway, so I brought my recording equipment because I knew we had to do the show, and I was at my sister's house, and she has, my nephews are 14 and 5, so it's not like I can just go find a quiet area. So I had to do Schmoedown Rundown episode number 11, and I interviewed Jeff Snyder and Perry Nemiroff in the same episode from the back of a toilet because I had to go to the bathroom. And I don't think anybody ever knew that except for us because I told you guys that. But it's such a weird, it was just a weird thing where it was like, I got to find a way to do this. And if I have to do this on the back of a toilet, like, I'm going to get it done. So
for the love of the game.
For the love of the game. Thank God we weren't doing video either, because that would have just been, I think I even told Perry that I did it, and I think she thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. I was on the back of the toilet, and I have no shame whatsoever about it, because it's just something I had to do. But
did you wash your hands after?
Well, I mean, I wasn't using the toilet at the time.
Oh, well.
Oh, okay. I thought you.
No. I wasn't in BM mode, but you guys have any weird experiences? Like, have you recorded the show from the back of like a train or something? Like, I don't know.
I once had to record. I think it was the very first or one of the. It was a Bibiani interview. I had to do it in one of my sister's clothes closets because I didn't have internet at the time. So I had to go to their place and try and find like a quiet room because they're still living in their apartment, and I didn't want to completely intrude. So I went into like their walk-in closet, closed the door, and I was just like surrounded by clothes. I think Aaron, even before we started taping, I think you even mentioned something like, "Where are you?" like, yeah, I'm in a closet. So it worked out.
What about you, Brian? You got a weird recording story?
I always record at my desk in my office, like always. And I don't have any strange stories. I mean, sometimes like my cat will jump up and knock the microphone over and try to make her presence felt on the mic. But the only other strange thing I can think of is the first time Chandler was on. For whatever reason, I just got the giggle fits, and you can hear them in the outtakes for the episode. But I think the giggles were even greater than the outtakes suggest. For whatever reason, I could not stop laughing for probably 10 minutes, and it was a strange thing, but it was probably a highlight of the show, at least from my perspective.
And generally, the reason that I believe that you laugh is because I'll say something that sounds serious, but you can't take me seriously.
Yeah, Aaron's serious voice, there's just this slight bit of he's trying to be serious, and yet he sounds funny trying to be serious. There's a little bit of that element. And so for whatever reason, it used to kill me. And that particular night, for whatever reason, it hit me.
And shout out to Brienne, Miss Movies, because she was like, you got to put that in some sort of outtakes, because that's gold. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll do it. So we did some outtakes in there for a little bit, but she's the
only third party to host the show besides the three of us.
That's true.
Yeah,
she's the only third party. She's read some ads for us. She's been very nice. She's made a shirt with our names. She's contributed in some other ways.
She's been a tremendous friend of the show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything that we've ever asked of her, she's more than happy to help us out, and vice versa. So we'll help her out in any way we can. I think we try to do that with everybody. Like, was it Sam Levine or was it somebody else where I said, whatever we can do for you, we'll be happy to do it. And I was like, what the hell could we possibly do? I don't know what we can do for you, but we'll do it, I guess. I don't remember. I don't think it was Sam, but it was just like, well, whatever we can do, which is nothing. Like,
It was Scott Mance, clearly.
Not probably, but he was tremendous, by the way. But I can't get enough of that. But as we kind of wind this down, like, you guys have anything else you want to input before we call it a night?
Well, I mean, we should mention Paul Wolf was here
Absolutely
for a good stretch.
Beat me to it.
Yeah, and we have to give thanks for that, because whenever you do this show, you are making some sort of sacrifice one way or the other, and he had a family he has a family. He has a family and kids, and for him to find a way to make time to record with us for the time that he was with us on the show, that's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate his contributions, and I mean, I don't really have anything else much to say about that. It's just he was tremendous in the time that he was here, and that we'll leave it there.
I'm curious to the audience listening, what has been your favorite Schmoedown Rundown moment, Schmoedown Rundown interview? What's been your favorite moment of ours? Favorite episode, favorite interview? We've run through our favorites. I want to hear what the audience has to say.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking me again. I was like, I think I already said that, but if you want to hear me talk about Scott Mance again, I'll do it. If you want.
You had to record that how many times? Twice?
Okay. Well, there's another story if you'd like to hear it real quick.
I just wish you had recorded that on a proper device is all.
Oh, yeah.
So good, you guys are just ripping into me right now. But what happened? See, what happened was Scott had he was like, "Hey, can we do it via FaceTime?" And I was like, "Whatever you want, man. Like, it's Scott Mance." So I'm gonna say, "Hey, man, could you do a Google Hangout?" No, you can. We'll make it work. And then we recorded it. I had to Google how to record FaceTime because I didn't know, and then I figured it out. And then I got done with this amazing interview that you'll never hear because it got all jacked up. What had happened was that you're supposed to switch the input on from your headphone jack to something else. I don't know, but it got technical. And
there's an easier way to do it as well. We didn't do it.
There you go. Makeshift Googling from a non-tech expert. That's what happens. But anyway, basically you could hear me just fine, but you couldn't hear him barely at all. So, which is, if that's Scott Mance, you can't hear it. If you can't hear it. So I asked Scott, I was like, "Hey man, we did this, and it's complete waste. And can we do it again?" And I was expecting him to be like, you had your chance, pal. Not because he's a jerk, but just because he's busy. And he was like, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll do it. We'll get it done." And I remember apologizing just profusely about I'm sorry, and this should have never happened. And this isn't very professional. And he's like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm happy to be here. I'd love to talk to you for about 45 minutes or however we're going to talk. Let's just do it again. Let's do the same vibe, man. Same everything." So basically what I'm saying is, when you see Scott Mance on TV, same guy, same energy. Doesn't matter what part of the day. And he was just over the moon to talk with me. And then he even got kind of, I don't want to say emotional, but he I think I hit a nerve when we were talking about profiles. It was such a big part of my podcast upbringing and all that. But I've kind of gone on anyway. But Frank, do you have any closing memories here?
Well, I do have to mention my time out there when I was fortunate to go to the studio for Collision. Being able to walk around that space and put a mic in front of their face, get them to say some words was really cool and kind of intimidating a little bit, because you're not sure if they've ever heard the show, because they're busy people. They got a lot of stuff to do out there, and maybe they've heard your voice, and if they did, maybe they don't know it's you. That's your voice. And so it's it was kind of weird to just walk up and be like, "Hey, this is the rundown. You got a few minutes." And I remember talking to actually I talked to Andrew Guy out there, and Mark Riley and a slew of others. So it was really cool that with all that going on, they could still take some time and say a few words for our show, for the fans of the Schmoedown. And and without this show and affiliation with the Schmoedown and everything Kristian has done for this show in terms of like getting guests in the very beginning, helping us get off the ground and make this into what it is now and how we're going to continue to go forward. And then again, letting me go out there to the studio. Didn't have to do that, so very grateful for those times that have been out there. And yeah, that's really all I got to say.
Celebration.
Yeah.
We got to meet Sam Witwer.
Oh yeah.
Well.
I did run into him at Collision, like right by the bathroom. So it's kind of a weird moment to say hi. Because I think he wanted, Sam Levine, yeah.
No, Sam Witwer was that Collision? Oh, wait.
Oh, I thought he said Sam Levine.
He said Sam Witwer.
Oh, never mind. Well, anywho, different Sam. Sorry.
different Sam. Also a good Sam.
Yeah, both great Sams. Yeah.
So you guys are part of the reason why Sam Witwer was exhausted during his.
That's right. We roughed him up.
He was plenty tired before. Believe me. But Brian, what do you got? Closing thoughts here.
I just love those moments when we have guests on and you can tell that they have listened to the show. I mean, there was a moment last week where Sam Levine was like, "Hey guys, I was listening to this episode, and he references things that we've said. So that's always a thrill when people are listening to your show. I mean, some people may not, but when there are certain guests that you can tell engage with your show, not just because they're on it, but because they enjoy it, that's always a thrill. And I've cherished most of all the relationships that I've built from the show, whether it's with guests and, of course, with the fans. So there's a number of great relationships, as well as with you guys, that I cherish fondly. And I thank Kristian for allowing me the chance to come on here. I thank you guys for approving it as well. And it's been the highlight of my SK Plus experience.
Well, before we get out of here, be foolish not to mention, of course, once again, Kristian Harloff is the reason that we're here, the reason that we do this show every single week. He gave us the platform and the opportunity, and he believed in us and still does. And, sometimes we bounce off of each other and sometimes we hit walls, but that's what you do during the creative process. There's times where, Frank and I have hit walls with each other. Bryan and I have hit walls with each other, and so on and so forth, but we're all creative, and that's what happens. But the guy's been tremendous for us, and I just want to let him know that we do appreciate this, and we know that this is a privileged position that we are in at the moment, and we do cherish it. We do not want to squander it. Mark Ellis as well, and the unsung heroes of this show, Robert Butler III.
Oh my God.
And Cody Hall. There's not a person that I wish I could go and shake their hand more really than Robert Butler III. Like I give RB3 like just I feel like I panic and then I tell RB3 something. He's like, "Oh, no problem, man. I got it." And he's like totally cool about it while I'm having like a seizure over here. So Robert Butler III, you're the man, and anything that I've ever needed or like, "Oh, I don't know how to do this," RB3 knows, and he will walk me through it or help me through it. And he's tremendous. And the same thing with Cody. Like if I, throw up just a random episode that I didn't tell him about, he's like, "Does this go up today?" I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "Okay, got it." So, Cody's good as well. He's always been good to us. And, one more thing I completely forgot.
Can I jump in on that, Robert? I just want to say one thing about Robert. Robert has been wonderful to the show, to me, throughout X amount of many months. And I got to give him even added credit because it is not easy sometimes, last minute, hey, we're having a problem with this. Major props to him. I also got to give props to Brian Ward, Clint Lajeunesse, and Shane Bowman. They've helped with our artwork the last 7 to 8 months. Those guys have done amazing things for us. And it's truly a privilege currently to be able to say that Brian Ward is a friend of ours and a partner of ours. And I smile every time I get to see the latest incarnation of the Schmoedown Rundown logo and artwork for each episode.
Absolutely. And the guy that came up with that logo, Jay Williams, you know him as the co-host of After Schmo. He made the Schmoedown Rundown logo. I had an idea in my head. I wanted to look like the WCW Monday Nitro logo. And for some reason, I don't know why, I'm not even really a big WCW guy, but that's the idea I had in my head. And I swear the guy pulled out a design and emailed it to me that he plucked it straight from my brain. So I don't feel like we really mentioned that a lot, but Jay Williams is the guy that came up with that.
I don't think I even knew that.
Oh,
Wow.
Now you know. Yeah, so Jay Williams came up with that metal and the flames, all Jay Williams' idea. Of course, since then it's gone through some changes and different things, but initially it was him. We had all kinds of Schmoevillians sent in designs. We had like a Blade Runner logo there for a minute and different things. So just any time that we reach out to people and they reach back to us, that's tremendous. Like I never expect if I put something in the group like, hey, we want some questions for the show. The thing is, I never expect anyone to reply, which I don't know what that says about me, but like, the fact that people put a thumbs up or even a thumbs down and just take time out of their day to comment and say, like, whether it's, oh man, this interview with Sam Levine was tremendous, or Aaron's voice sucks. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's fine. Like it really is fine. Like just taking your time at it. If you didn't say anything, that's when we're in trouble. So say something. And it's tremendous. Like every time, like I'm sitting there and I'll like talk to my wife and she's like, well, how's it going today? Like, how's the show going today? I was like, we're at like 7,000 views or something. And she's like, what? Like, it's just mind blowing. And the response to the show has just been, insane. Yeah.
And that's just one of the things I want to say about this community, Schmoeville, the MTS community. They were very receptive. And I think when fans in this community do something, they usually and give you any kind of advice or pointers, whatever they think to help whatever you're doing that much better, and that's always appreciated. And I think you can always count on this community. I mean, look, it's not a perfect community, and a lot more good than bad. And I'm really proud to be involved with everybody in this community on the MTS page, Schmoeville, everything. Because again, like without them, they could have just tanked this show from the beginning. They could have said, "We're not listening to it. We'll just stick with the Schmoeville stuff," and we would just been a couple of me and Aaron and whoever else could have just been a couple of guys just speaking into the dark.
Wild and crazy guys.
Yeah, so if it wasn't for this community not listening and commenting and clicking like and sharing and all that other stuff, we're not doing this, I don't think, and it's not as fun without you guys out there listening, to be quite honest as well.
Yeah, and I know sometimes we make you laugh, sometimes we give you a headache and make you want to, I don't know, throw your controller at the screen. I'm not really sure, but hopefully anybody out there that has taken a second to listen, to do anything towards the show to help it grow, just know that all of us, we appreciate it. And, I think Frank said it best. We wouldn't be anywhere without you. And I hope this episode hasn't sounded like super pretentious, because that would just be awful. But, we're happy to be here. We want to do more things with this show. So, as long as you guys are there to support us, we'll keep giving it to you. So I guess we'll go ahead and conclude this kind of casual Friday episode, as I like to call it. But many more to come. And I keep throwing cliches out there. God, please make me stop. Also,
Happy New Year.
Also, something else. Let's put an over and under on this. And Frank, I'll start with you. Over or under 10 times that I have screwed up a close and had to edit it out.
Aaron, come on. Come on, Aaron.
20.
Is that the new over under?
At least half the episodes. Like I'll be ready to close and I'll say something. I'll just that's not it. And I'll have to go back and do it like 3 times. But
but you always nail it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, after 5 takes. It's like Stanley Kubrick is directing me. I just do 100 takes. But anyway. All right, well, this one I'm not going to screw up, because here we go. All right, guys. That's going to do it for this episode. Frank Janisch, where can you be found online, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at FrankieJ29. And, of course, follow the newly SD Rundown Stats Twitter handle for your latest and greatest Schmoedown stats.
Brian Davids, where can you be found, man?
Twitter at BDF331, as well as filmschlubspodcast.com.
And you can find me on Twitter at ATTitanium. And we will see you for our normal Saturday episode this Saturday, I guess. Yeah, I almost made it through without screwing up. So until next time, we'll see you.
And also, Schmoedown Rundown. I can't wait to lick those tears off your faces.
Fuck you!